Most features in the hotel, including hot showers, kettles, speakers, and coffee makers, will be powered by a series of unique 5, one of Hyundai's electric cars. The idea came after a survey of British holiday makers found that most are now rethinking their future holiday plans due to the cost of living crisis, guys.
All right, as long as you don't have to sleep in the cars.
Exactly, Claudio. Thanks so much.
Coming up, legal trouble for Ye, the rapper formerly known as Kanye West.
What he said about the death of George Floyd that could land him on the receiving end of a big lawsuit. That's next.
All right, let's see if we can get this done.
We're back, and more controversial statements from the rapper formerly known as Kanye West could potentially find him embroiled in a legal battle with the family of George Floyd.
During a recent podcast interview, Ye, as he now goes by, questioned the cause of Floyd's death, suggesting it wasn't caused by Derek Chauvin, former Minneapolis police officer who was convicted of murder after he knelt on Floyd's neck for 9.5 minutes.
NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas joins us now to break it all down. And Danny, I'm curious, what specifically did Ye say here, and could he be using some sort of free speech defense?
Possibly suggesting that George Floyd died of a fentanyl overdose. Does he have a defense? Well, that depends on if a lawsuit's ever brought. And although you may hear attorneys today saying, we're considering a lawsuit, the magic words you didn't hear were, we are filing a lawsuit. And that's because this would be a very difficult case. First, defamation, you can throw that out right away. You cannot defame a deceased person. So is it intentional infliction of emotional distress? Well, first, it has to be extreme and outrageous. And as we just saw, an autopsy report concluded that there was fentanyl in George Floyd's system. So if the family wanted to litigate this, they would relitigate their loved one's death and then be litigating whether or not fentanyl contributed to the death. If fentanyl contributed to the death, then the defense will argue, Kanye, that this cannot be extreme and outrageous behavior because there was fentanyl in the system and it contributed to his death.
Let's look closer at that, because it was civil rights attorney Lee Merritt who's represented the Floyd family. He condemned the remarks and he tweeted, well, one cannot defame the dead. The family of George Floyd is considering suit for Kanye's false statements about the manner of his death, claiming Floyd died from fentanyl, not the brutality established, criminally and civilly undermines and diminishes the Floyd's family's fight. So what is the legal action that they could possibly pursue here if it's not defamation?
By the way, I saw Lee's comments. We can put them right back up if they're still there. I agree with every word that he said. There you go. It undermines and diminishes the Floyd family's right. I agree with that. Was it rude to say? Yes. Was it insensitive? Yes. Is it legally actionable? I think his statement falls short of saying that. Saying that we're only considering legal action, but the reality is this would be a very difficult case to prove using the extreme and outrageous standard. What you see normally with intentional infliction of emotional distress, and I've alleged it myself, it's at the end of a long list of other claims. Why? It's kind of a catch-all. It's never your strongest case because it's very difficult to prove. So you put it in at the end. Maybe it's a bargaining chip, maybe not, but it's not your lead cause of action if you have a good case. So this is a very difficult case to make out. I don't anticipate there will be a lawsuit, but no harm in saying on the record, like Lee did, that this was inappropriate and we're considering legal action.
And Danny, real quick, we know that Merritt also said that they're considering potentially similar pursuit against Candace Owens, who made a documentary about George Floyd. Could this same approach kind of apply to her legally?
You might have a stronger case in the case of a documentary simply because there are so many statements contained in that documentary. But again, defamation, you almost completely rule that out because if it's a deceased person, they can't be defamed. If it's the family, maybe they were defamed, but you'd have to look very closely at the documentary. That would be hard to prove. But if there is a false statement in there that somehow causes extreme harm, you have to prove it was extreme and outrageous. It's a very difficult standard, but possibly with a documentary, because it's an hour plus long, however long it is, you have a lot of statements in there that could potentially meet that standard. It's just a difficult standard to meet.
Extreme and outrageous.
Extreme and outrageous.
All right. Danny Savalas breaking it all down. Danny, thanks so much.
Many New Yorkers are on edge after an increase in violent crime in the subway system. The NYPD is investigating after 3 murders in the last 2 weeks. NBC News digital reporter Maya Eaglin has the latest.
Just a gorgeous fall afternoon in the heart of Texas. No weather to speak of. Sun out, roof open. Yes, yes, and yes. A great day for football at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. Today we got a weekend into this video shows the frightening moments leading up to the fatal stabbing of a 38-year-old man at the 176th Street station in the Bronx. Police say the stabbing was unprovoked, and the victim was ambushed by an unknown suspect while exiting a northbound Ford train. In a separate incident, police say a 31-year-old man was stabbed in the leg after an argument with an unknown suspect in the Times Square 42nd Street station. These attacks come as New York's mass transit system is experiencing a string of violent incidents taking place in the last 3 years. The NYPD says there have been 7 murders in the transit system since October 9th. According to NYPD statistics, transit crime is up 41.4% compared to the same time last year, forcing riders to rethink their daily commutes.
Hearing so many stories of like people doing things to other people on the subway has made me feel less safe, but I don't really have the option of doing anything else.
Despite the recent uptick in violence, data from the NYPD shows that numbers for overall crime in the transit system have been lower than pre-pandemic levels.
We were actually
That's
down
a start
about
they can live with. 15 yards on their first play from scrimmage.
12% from 4 years
Big
ago.
article in the
Over
paper this
60%
morning
from
talking
10 years
about how
ago.
they wanted to get chunk plays in the run game. Early on, there's a good one.
We
There
fully
isn't for guys on
understand
defense. They've got
the
to remember the old
perception
adage. You got to meet
sometimes
force with
it's
force, and if you don't,
just as
you
much
get
as
run over
reality.
as they did on that last one.
NYPD, the mayor's office, and
Fields on first down. Fights it long.
to increase the number of officers.
Get his ass. God damn it. All right.
Multiple players combined for their team's first sack of the game.
By the way, to do the analysis, I've got to ask, how did he stay alive that long in the first half?
Great footwork, which we know he has. If he would have made a mistake like it running or run for some yards, he would have had a lot of defensive coordinator.
But even with promises from city officials, New Yorkers are still skeptical.
I've become more and more scared of using it, so in the daytime,
Another
no
try
longer
after
at
the
night,
first
no
down
longer
sack.
after 5.
That was like Indian reporting. Some tips for subway riders. Plan your route before getting on. Stay alert and ride in the conductor's train, which is
Run for yardage.
coming up. Fast food savings on the county. In the past, some rewards programs to free food, fast food chains are making cuts.
There we go.
How to impact your next order and how you can still save.
All right, then, baby.
Make some significant job. CNBC's Pippa Stevens with us with that and more financial headlines. Pippa, good morning.
Good morning, my
And this is
results
Brian
from
Goodman
CNBC.
and Sally with the Cowboys.
Revenue is set to slow due to weaker sales of Windows 11 computers for PCs. Perplexity has affected about 1,000 people in the Xbox, Edge, and next-gen technology teams. Other big tech companies are cutting costs, jobs, and slowing hiring,
So they'll get
including
another
Meta,
shot on offense
Salesforce,
following
Netflix,
that
and
pick six.
Coinbase.
And now the
And
kick
the
is
National
away.
Labor Relations Board will start counting ballots today from
Pulls
a
it
union
up to
election at the
13.
Amazon warehouse near Albany, New York. Roughly 800 people work at the facility. Amazon Labor Union, which successfully organized a warehouse in Staten Island in April, is leading this latest effort. Labor experts say securing more wins could give the union leverage in getting Amazon to the negotiating table. And Netflix has launched a new feature
At the
called
line,
Profile
prepping for their next
Transfer
drive
that
to
lets
Bears
users move their
offense.
personalized
Remember,
recommendations,
they were just
viewing
out here a
history,
moment ago
stage
through
games,
the pick
and other
six, so we'll
settings
see
to
if
a
they
new
can take
account.
better care of the
Quickly
football.
ask users to share
Good
an
shit.
account with their roommate, partner, or parents, and then part ways. You can transition to a new account without all the awkwardness of breakup. It's also part of Netflix's crackdown on password sharing. The company estimates more than 100 million households are using the service for shared accounts. And guys, I am one because I am still on my parents' account.
That one good for 10 yards. And that'll bring up the second and just about a few inches here. This defense for the Cowboys, they were terrific a week ago.
I have to admit, I was extremely impressed by what I saw on tape because they stayed in the face of the quarterback the entire game. They ended up getting 4 sacks. So they
Officially, it will go as a 1-yard loss, and that's going to lead to a 3rd down. So they just need 1 yard here to pick up the first down.
Joe, good morning. Look, throughout the pandemic, we become accustomed to these great
Fields
deals.
to throw on
99 cents for
3rd and 1.
coffee. Domino's offering to treat you for picking up your own pizza. The
First
reality
downs
of
are
that,
able to
Joe, is
convert
that the
by
sheer
20
volume of
there on
pressure
3rd
reached
and
all
1.
corners of the restaurant industry, there are still deals to be found. Two giants like McDonald's will tell you, nobody is immune from inflation.
The way the NFL is nowadays, we hardly ever see
For
anyone really
families
run
looking
for
to
a
save,
short
there
yardage.
used to be a whole feast of options. Credit for grabbing your own pie. $2-based deals, especially for app orders. Some of those deals are drying up. With fast food prices on the rise due to inflation, many customers taking notice.
I would pay $8 for a burrito. Now I pay somewhere close to like almost $11.
Did you notice the change when you go to fast food restaurants?
Not what they had in mind there. That's going to go as a loss of 4.
The prices have gone up ridiculous.
How much varies not only by the company, but can even change based on individual franchises. When it's clear, these businesses have had to adjust the prices they charge, which becomes more costs.
Ooh, okay then, baby. Y'all here balling.
It's his second year in the league as a quarterback. That's going to be one of the looks on the tape. It's like, I shouldn't have thrown that.
No doubt about it. His coaching staff will be
Chipotle
emphatic
has
about
increased
it.
its prices 4 times
Remember,
since the summer of
second year, as you
2020.
noted,
McDonald's
on the job
announcing a roughly
training.
8%
So he's got to
hike in the
take this
first quarter of
feedback
this
that
year.
he's getting,
The
negative or
inflation is affecting
otherwise,
all
and turn
sectors,
it into
and no
positives
one
moving
is
forward.
immune. Though there are still value deals, like the $1, $2, $3 menu. Taco
Prescott
Bell.
now with a first and 10
Fox Business
right at the
contributor said
30.
this in the context of inflation.
Let's
Yes,
go on the
yes,
ground
had a
now.
nice look at Taco Bell.
And they get him down, but now it takes it across the 40-yard
criticized. The company
Right off the
even
bat, it's a
responded
first
to
down to
Twitter.
start the drive,
14
20
times
yards.
$2 burritos equals $28. What's your $28? But clearly, not all the burritos are that inexpensive.
Not too
Just
fancy
right now,
there.
I was at Taco
Nothing
Bell
fancy
and
at
I
all.
asked for a
Challenging
burrito.
that defense.
Regular
that
burrito, too.
go-around.
And
The
it was,
offense won the
$8.51
challenge.
for the price.
For one burrito.
Yes.
Taco Bell did not return our request for comment. Meanwhile, some fast food reward programs that many consumers love are also tightening their belts. Dunkin' Donuts recently ripped them for running a free cup of coffee to $50, up from $40. While Chipotle is saving with his entree, going from
Good shit.
to more than $160 to earn a free burrito. It was dinner or a dose of caffeine. Many rely on those benefits to save a few bucks. These rewards programs are
tackles and turn them into big runs, and that's what he did.
They save a lot of people.
Nowadays,
Starbucks rewards are a thing because
contact balance,
$10 for
the
a
ability
coffee.
to go through trash, come out the other side, avoid
Ezekiel Elliott.
Okay then, fellas.
Ezekiel Elliott. He has career touchdown number 78, tying it with both Eddie George and Frank Gifford on the all-time list. And the Cowboys have taken a 2-touchdown lead now. Extra point by Morrow, and good. And it's now 14-0. The kick team out there for the Cowboys as they run up to send this one away. This is taken just shy of the 10. The Bears offense ready to go for their next drive. As the offense comes out here, Charles, remember they threw the interception last time out, but they were moving the football down the field. Looked like they were going to have a sustained drive that ended in points.
Fuck.
And because of that, there's no way you can call the last drive a success. Yes, there are things to build on because they found some play calls that work. Now, they got to build another drive and find a way to avoid the turnover before they get on the last one.
Are we seeing the wild west of recruiting right now?
From the 27, for Fields to turn, and down he goes. Micah Parsons, he's the one to get him, and that is sack number 7 for him on the year. 14-0 the score. This is the NFL on EA Sports.
We're assessing the people who want to play. Jay's father, Joe, of course, is the winningest coach in Division I college football history, whose legendary career abruptly ended in 2011 amid allegations he failed to take action in the university's child sex abuse scandal. Jay Paterno is now on the board of trustees as college sports reach a turning point.
Throwing on third down, Fields. For the third time here this half, it's intercepted.
Good shot.
Picked up by Leighton Vander Esch. And the Cowboys are going to take possession of the football. Boy, so another interception, CD, and it feels like he's starting to unravel a little bit.
And as you would expect, still work in progress here in his second season. He has to start cleaning up some of these mistakes, though, because now his head coach, his offensive coaches, they have to evaluate whether you keep playing him and let him work through it, or you start thinking about going to his back. That was a good run, and it got to the second level. And what I mean by that is, that's where the linebackers usually play. The first level being the defensive front, the last level being the secondary. But the strong safety position ended up making the tackle, and oftentimes we call them a hybrid. Combination defensive back, combination linebacker. This is a linebacker make the stop.
Way down to the 16-yard line. 91 yards rushing for him so far as his terrific season continues here. He's broken off some big-time runs here in this first half.
And let's just face it, when you go into a game, you think you got the plays that are going to work, but when you actually get out there and they're starting to happen, your confidence rises, and he's running with terrific ability.
And he stopped immediately there. Calling no gain on the play, and it'll be second down. This defense could use a few more plays like that right now.
Certainly could, but think about it from an offensive perspective right now. They've got a lead, but they don't want to throttle down too much and stall themselves. Still want to move at a nice pace.
One thing that is clear,
Let's play something up there.
NBC News, State College, Pennsylvania.
But we got the morning news now. A big boost, a very big boost. A winning Mega Millions ticket is sold in Fort Myers. Over weeks after Hurricane Ian tore
Oh shit, I just raised my shit up. Good looking out.
You're gonna burn us up, I swear to God. You're gonna burn us down. You got so much stuff.
He had to fight for every yard on that run. Shook himself free of a tackle and kept fighting, even with the rest of the defense closing in on him. That's the kind of effort you'll take every single time.
The part the survey showed is the fastest average per car in line. There were just more cars in line.
Good tackle. Good defense.
Michael Kendricks coming in to drive. It's a step in the right direction defensively here because you're facing this sizable deficit. They're going to need more plays like that. A good sack, though. Good effort there.
And what you're hoping is, as you said, a step in the right direction. And that means it's something to build on. So you get the first one, and hopefully that can ignite them. And now they can make a few more plays and get back into this game.
And that hits off the left upright, and it caroms away no good. And this will remain a 2-touchdown game. And no mistaking that sound. It reverberated through the whole stadium.
And it's the sound, Brandon, no kicker wants to hear. It looked like he had it on target the whole way, but the upright said,
At the line, prepping for their next drive, the Bears offense. They're sort of seeing themselves spiral out of control. Let's see if they can get things back on track.
And this is where the coach is walking that line of being calm and really being firm with his team. I had one tell me once, when we were having a tough patch, this too shall pass, this too shall pass. And in fact, we kept having a rough patch. He said, but you got to do something to make it pass. And that's what they have to do. They've got to get some control back, get themselves reasserted, and calm things down.
See if they can get calm and reassert themselves here. On 2nd and 10, Fields firing quickly here, and that's complete. And he'll be upended at the 28-yard line. Just a 3-yard gain there. This offense so far on third down.
Wouldn't donate shit. Fuck out of here.
Now the Cowboys going to burn the first of their timeouts. As we step aside here in this
Oh no, somebody hit the Mega Millions or something in Florida where Ian, the hurricane, hit. They was interviewing people and they was like, yeah, if I would donate to such and such. I'm like, shit. Fuck out of here. Fuck out of here. Donating shit to a motherfucker. Unless they got our last name.
These guys have definitely been outplayed in the first half. I like their confidence. I like the way that they haven't panicked out there, the way they're carrying themselves. They were starting to
Gary, I feel like if you were to hold on to some of that,
maintain your points
and
start to put together some drives.
Yeah, you can do a little bit of both. A little bit of both. All right. Thank you very much. Well, you can call it a Kodak comeback. Film photography having a significant resurgence, especially among younger generations who have grown up with nothing but smartphones. NBC News correspondent Gotti Schwartz found out why. And by the way, the story you're about to see was shot entirely
first and 10. Here's Fields.
It loads in the jiffy, and you're ready to shoot.
Roski.
And the Cowboys are going to take possession here. It's a touchback, and they'll take over at the 20-yard line. Well, CD, when you mentioned earlier about spreading the ball around in this game, I don't think you mentioned the guys in the other uniform with 4 interceptions here in the first half, and several different guys who picked them off.
Yeah, instead of analyzing what's going wrong, throwing the football, the defense, they keep it excellent game plan, well scouted, and they're taking it away.
Having our way this game.
It's probably one of the best moments you can have as a human being.
The Dallas offense here set to begin the drive. They have the game here followed by the Golden Date on the calendar next weekend. Charles, this is a crowd that you have to think really is relishing the opportunity to be on the couch for a few days.
Yeah, they certainly are, but let's face it, they can't get caught looking ahead to that couch time. While they're playing this one, they've got to take care of business first.
Coming up to halftime, we remind you once again we're going to check in with Jonathan Coachman in Orlando. He'll have stats and numbers right now in the NFL as we reach now arguably the halfway point of the season. Time flies.
It certainly is. Time to get the splitters out, my man.
Thinking about the role that I go get it developed, and then I'm like, oh wait, that was fun. I told her about it.
This one complete downfield on the left side. They're going to get this beyond the 40 before it's taken down. Again, there are 21 yards. And defensively, zone coverage there. You have to be a little careful. You're losing lead against a good quarterback like he is to not play too much zone.
Yeah, you have to be careful about how much time you're giving up. I think it's a good point you just brought up. So maybe if you still want to play zone, go to the zone blitz scheme. And you can drop anyone out of your defensive front, defensive end, defensive tackle. It doesn't matter. You just exchange someone who's bringing more pressure to the
I fucked that up.
Good vision there as across midfield down to the 45. 111 yards rushing for him as he has been tough to stop here this first half. They'll go with Pollard here on first down.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
Cowboys. Tony Pollard, his second
Good shit, good shit.
of the year. And the Cowboys will extend their lead in the final minute of the half. Well, I don't think that we're ready yet to say the route is on, but they have certainly looked near flawless here in this first half. And now an extra point away from making it 21-0.
Yeah, your experience led you to say that because we've been seeing those 21-0 leads coming.
Good morning, I'm Nick Lansomwa in for Bill Bryant, and I'm Savannah Thomas right now on Morning News Now. Toronto, just as we were starting to see some relief at the pump, gas prices are now rising again, with OPEC announcing major production cuts. What's behind the decision and what it all could mean for your wallet? Plus, response from the White House as tensions mount between the West and OPEC allied nations like Russia. Unity in crisis, a presidential visit to communities in shambles. Biden surveying Ian's devastation where it made landfall. Joining the president, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, a potential 2024 rival. So the White House stresses the visit isn't about politics. It's about recovery.
They'll take it up past the 25 to the 26-yard line.
For everything to get squared away in the state of Florida. We're not leaving until this gets done. I promise you that.
More from the president's visit and the latest on recovery efforts this morning. Call and response, heightened tensions around the Korean Peninsula this morning as North Korea fires off 2 short-range missiles after the U.S. redeployed a carrier in the region. The controversial weapons test at the center of this high-stakes back and forth. And liftoff, another picture-perfect launch to the International Space Station with the joint SpaceX-NASA crew making history in the process. We love some space news. Yes. We love when it's almost Friday. We love all these Today we're getting started with the dramatic cuts in oil production announced by OPEC and its partners, including Russia, and we're breaking down what that means for you. The group announcing yesterday will slash output by 2 million barrels a day.
That action is expected to send gas prices higher after weeks of decline, and it's sparking immediate new concerns about inflation. This morning, the White House is blasting the move, and we have full coverage right now, starting with NBC News correspondent Emily McKenna, and what this means for consumers.
After a year of tumultuous gas prices, signs today paint a picture could worsen as some of the world's top oil producers, including Saudi Arabia and Russia, promise deep cuts to output. OPEC Plus announced they will slash production by 2 million barrels per day to spur a recovery in crude prices. The White House calling the decision short-sighted.
We are providing security, stability to the energy markets.
The move defying an aggressive push from President Biden to keep fuel flowing, even visiting Saudi Arabia this summer to convince them to increase oil production. With midterms just weeks away, higher energy prices could be a blow to Democrats and undo months of steadily dropping costs at the pump in most areas of the country. But who is the timing of the cuts?
The barrels that are going to be cut will be cut in November. But what it means also is higher prices for drivers, higher prices for heating, higher prices for holiday travel.
In parts of California, gas prices are already topping $7 a gallon.
I gotta go to where I'm going, so I gotta pay it, but I'm not happy about it.
And across the country in Massachusetts, Scott McFarlane has been in the heating oil business for more than 50 years. He says customers should be prepared to pay more as temperatures there fall.
The timing is awful, but it's going to be a tough winter for everybody.
Doing too much.
Anybody in business.
Adding insult to injury, families already struggling with soaring inflation. Emily McKenna, NBC News, New York.
For more, let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Rafa and the head of petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy, Patrick DeHaan. Ali, I'll start with you. A last-ditch effort by the White House to convince OPEC members to vote against a proposed production cut failed. How is the Biden administration responding, and how's it losing it?
Yeah, good morning today. The White House chose its words pretty carefully when this news dropped in yesterday, saying President Biden was disappointed in the short-sightedness of this decision by OPEC. And that's a pretty tame response considering the timing of all this. Remember, it was just back in July when President Biden was visiting Saudi Arabia asking for the exact opposite of this, asking for more oil to be entered into the market. He said publicly that he's concerned about how this will affect the global economy, global markets as a whole, especially with relationships between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, the U.S. and Russia, even more fragile. So this is something he's been trying to avoid for months. So in response to this yesterday, the White House saying that they're doing really all they can do at the moment. They're releasing more oil supply from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve to try to offset.
It's always a beautiful thing to do.
Start in November. They're also saying that they would like to start these discussions with Congress about any sort of legislation that could be put in place to prevent this from happening. And they're also just promoting as a whole this need that they say is urgent for the United States to be more energy independent. But in general, the timing of this really could not be worse for the president and his party staff.
Absolutely. Patrick, let's bring you in here to the really important stuff, which is what does this mean for anybody at home, anybody with a car, mean, the national average gas price was back on the $3.87 this morning. That's, of course, after a high of over $5 a gallon earlier this year. We have slowly been seeing an uptick in prices even before this decision came out. But I mean, what's this going to look like? How long will it take for this particular cut to trickle down to gas stations across the country?
Well, we've already seen this anticipated for last week.
What?
Oil prices have already rallied some $10 a barrel. And so, conceivably, it's already hitting motorists in some areas, especially the South. We saw prices jumping in Dallas, Fort Worth. The East Coast, the Northeast are starting to see this play out. It's going to be an impact of roughly 10 to 30 cents a gallon on consumers. But for those in areas where prices have recently surged, such as California, the West Coast, and the Great Lakes, the increase, I should say the 10 to 30 cent jump is not going to be direct at the pump, rather because of refinery improvements in those areas where prices have spiked, but by not as much because of the production cut.
So a little tiny bit of negative good news in there, maybe not so bad. Ali, now Russia is among the countries who pushed for the cut. This, as you mentioned, also comes right before the midterms. You said bad timing for the president, but what exact impact do you think this could have at the ballot box? Do you see it doing anything?
Yeah, well, as Emily said in the package you put at the top there, this is really adding insult to injury to so many Americans.
God damn.
The midterm elections just 5 weeks away now, and inflation and the economy are two issues that poll after poll show are top of mind for voters as they get this pain in their pocket after the midterm elections. This is something
Bam, these motherfuckers having a bad day.
Democrats on, so the more that this really progressives identifying the church is just something that Democrats don't want to be attached to, don't want their name on the agenda.
Thanks for kicking us off this morning. Appreciate it.
And now we run to Florida and the recovery from Hurricane Ian. And yesterday, President Biden and his political rival, Ron DeSantis, gave the nation an image of unity in the midst of devastation. Biden met with DeSantis, a potential 2024 presidential opponent, in Fort Myers. The two put their political differences aside, touring the hardest-hit areas and meeting with people who lost everything. Biden promised the people of Southwest Florida that the federal government is with them in their long road to recovery.
We have one job, and only one job, and that's to make sure the people of Florida get everything that they need to fully, thoroughly recover.
Meanwhile, the death toll continues to rise, and the estimated cost from Ian is soaring into the billions. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch joins us now from Fort Myers Beach. Good morning, Jesse. So, to just jump in, Biden and DeSantis are working together now and have acknowledged that it will be a long road to recovery. And as I just said, that cost from the storm is rising into the billions, and it's going to take a lot to rebuild towns and roads and power grids. So, what exactly did the two say about working together for what seems to be the long haul?
Yeah, and going back to even before Hurricane Ian made landfall in the USA play, they both made clear, echoing the sentiment that they have been in lockstep with each other. We've already seen the federal government, authorization of the president, extending the amount of time that the federal government will be paying for debris removal here, and that is a huge help because that is something that is needed to be taken out of the way for much of the other cleanup to be done. I was talking with an electrical company here yesterday, one of the utilities who was providing power, trying to restore power for so many, and they talked about how with debris on top of down equipment, that extends how long it takes for them to get power back online. So if they're getting support funding in this part of the state to be able to get that debris out of the way, that will definitely help with easing the burden of cost, because this is going to be years long, is what the president said about the rebuilding, and we know that it's going to take the better part of this month, according to the governor, just to build a temporary bridge to one of the cut-off points. So you can imagine how long it will take to get a full bridge redone there.
Yeah, Jesse. The station is so large. I know you've been there for quite some time. What's the situation like in Fort Myers Beach this morning, and what are you hearing from people after President Biden's visit?
Yeah, unfortunately, frankly, it is still a mess here. Right across the street from where we are, there is a boat probably 30, 40 feet long with a car underneath it. The president's motorcade drove past that on the way in and on the way out. here. So those are the scenes that the President of the United States is seeing. At the same time, we know more people are getting power. We know that there's been a lot of water and food distributed according to officials. And we've seen health crews out here working to fix poles and lines that have been down. So the road to recovery is moving along here. And not where I am now, but a neighboring county, Collier County, is returning to school this morning. So that is promising for the kids in the communities who have obviously had a difficult pause on the start of the school year. So things are slowly moving back to normal. We know we're close to 100,000 structures have been checked according to the governor. But obviously, rescue and recovery efforts are ongoing in addition to all this rebuilding. A lot still to be done here.
For sure. And Jesse, earlier you mentioned those islands that have been cut off. I'm mindful that the Florida Department of Transportation finished a temporary land bridge to Pine Island. That island was cut off by Hurricane Ian, and they finished that bridge yesterday, which is 2 days ahead of schedule. What's next in recovery there? And also other cut off areas like Sanibel Island that you alluded to, where the causeway was partially destroyed. What's it looking like?
Yes, so we know that personnel, according to the governor, are moving onto Pine Island. The governor said by the end of the day yesterday, residents should have been able to get over there as well. But then we have the sheriff about it here, and they said that decision will be up to the governor. So trying to get some clarity on if residents are being able to move over there. We're trying to get up to Pine Island to see for ourselves what it looks like over there right now. And as for Sanibel Island, the governor said a bridge to there should be operational by the end of October. Again, that will be a temporary fix, not a long-term fix, because as you're seeing right there, that bridge in some parts is completely wiped out. Water is going right through both sides.
Yeah, and end of October, still some ways away. Definitely thanks for those updates. And now let's get a check on the morning news now. Meteorologist Bill Cairns joins us now. Good morning. Hi, Bill.
Hey, good morning. Great to see you guys. And, it's great to see the sunshine in the Northeast finally. The remnants and ghost of Ian, if you want to call it that, it turned into like a nor'easter. It plagued this region for like 6 straight days. People haven't seen the sun. The grass is like 10 feet long. We have to mow it because it's just been, we haven't had a chance because it's been so wet. And now it's finally exiting. So this is kind of the day that everything improves. So here's the weather. Just enjoy it. Talk about last quarter, we got like 2 days of this from Roanoke to Richmond to Raleigh to D.C. Baltimore to New York, Hartford, and Boston. Everyone's saying it's pretty warm, especially considering how cold it's been lately. And 70s is just going to feel fantastic. So get outside this afternoon before that sun sets early this evening. But that cold air, unfortunately, is coming down to Canada this weekend. Big temperature drop as we go through the Great Lakes tomorrow. Chicago drops about 53 for your high. There's even a chance we're going to see some snowflakes this weekend in the northern portions of the Great Lakes. Marquette only 43. And then that cold front and the cool air sweeps through the northeast as we go through Friday. So Saturday is going to be very chilly and windy throughout the northeast. Highs only in the 50s, and that's with full sunshine. And we're going to have a very cold Sunday morning. All frost and freezes in many areas to end the growing season in northern New England. If you have those early soccer games or football games, it's going to be chilly. You're going to have to get that hot cocoa and hot coffee. You're going to need it. So for today's forecast, much of the country is dry. That's fantastic. No problems on the west coast. Southern half of the nation looks good. But here comes that cold shot as we go through the weekend. That autumn chill starts in the Great Lakes, and then it makes its way through to the East Coast by Saturday. Also, our friends in New Mexico, you're probably the only rainy spot in the entire country. It's a very dry weekend, and we start our roller coaster temperatures as we go through fall.
All right, so we love Michelle, but I mean, you did just bring us the sunshine. Getting it, well, take some dryness.
And now to some breaking news in Thailand this morning. And a warning, the following images are distressing. Police say at least 36 people have been killed in a gun and knife attack on a daycare center northeast of the country. More than 20 children are said to be among the victims, some as young as 2 years old. Authorities say the gunman, identified as a former policeman, later took his own life. We'll have more developments on this story later in the show.
Breaking the now, let's get to the latest in North Korea. Tensions are continuing to rise after the regime fired more missiles into the waters off its eastern coast. That's after that provocative launch over Japan that led the U.S. to redeploy an aircraft carrier to the region. NBC News foreign correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer joins us now with the very latest. Hey, Janice, good morning. Good morning. It's now 6 launches in 12 days by
North Korea, and now we're learning that 12 North Korean fighter jets and bombers were staging air-to-surface firing drills today. South Korea sent up 30 aircraft in response. It comes as the U.S. is now holding trilateral military exercises with South Korea and Japan, and tension around the Korean Peninsula catches fire. This morning, as missiles fly and tensions flare, the American aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan and its strike group moving into waters around the Korean Peninsula, prompting North Korea to fire another 2 missiles, what Pyongyang called counteraction, in a statement blaming the U.S. for posing a serious threat.
Yeah.
It all comes a day after the U.S. and South Korea
28-6, we up.
surface missiles as deterrence. The one failed and sparked panic of a North Korean attack in what is now the most
Ooh. Just scored again.
If it continues down this road, it will only increase
35-6.
the isolation, increase the steps that are taken in response to their actions.
North Korea's testing blitz, 24 missiles so far this year, is a sign the regime is intensifying its weapons program. On Tuesday, sending an intermediate-range ballistic missile
North Korea off the hook.
2,800 miles and triggering alarms for millions to take cover. The pace of testing also reminiscent of 2017, when Kim Jong-un blasted a nuclear test. U.S. officials expect another to happen soon. This satellite imagery, according to Maxar, shows that North Korea is doing construction and restoring tunnels at its main nuclear site at Pyongyang, the same one they claim to have destroyed in 2018 during short-lived diplomacy with then-President Trump. An emergency U.S. Security Council meeting yielded little, beyond accusations that China and Russia, who hold veto power, are blocking discussion and protecting North Korea from stronger sanctions. As has been the case with past military displays by North Korea, timing and context matter to Kim Jong-un, but the sense is a 7th nuclear test could be imminent, possibly after China Communist Party Congress here in a couple of weeks, and before the midterm elections in the U.S. Thank you so much.
Man, it's been a long time. I was tempted to get on there and just sell a whole bunch of weed all day. Just sold out, smoke weed, and sell weed all day. It's just, I don't know, it'd be hard to get into that motherfucker still though, man. Especially, I'd be like, man, I might as well fuck with Red Dead, but Red Dead ain't got no updates. The graphics is too good on Red Dead to make me play, to let me play Grand Theft. You know what I'm saying? And Red Dead is just dead. That could have been a nice game too. That motherfucker was cold. I don't know what they just said, man. I don't know, like the motherfuckers who came up with the game got fired or something.
The head of the Russian space agency said Russia would soon leave the space station and build its own. He has since been replaced. Then today, another top Russian space official seemed to reverse course. How long will you be a partner with the international partners in this program?
We start to cooperate, as I said, many years ago, more than 40 years ago, and we will continue our cooperation as long as I can imagine.
Suggesting continued cooperation, former cosmonaut Sergei Krikov was asked if he was trying to ease tensions and turn down the temperature with NASA.
The answer is yes. We understand that it makes sense to keep trying because it is excellent infrastructure of building space can be used for espionage.
Krikov told me off camera that he's not speaking for the Kremlin. NASA hopes to keep flying the station with Russia until 2030. Meantime, NASA's Artemis lunar rocket, you may recall the uncrewed mission to the moon was struck back in August because of a problem with the hydrogen fuel line. Then the September Hurricane Ian came along. They had to move the rocket back into this building behind me. And now NASA says they probably will try again in mid-November. Back to you.
Tom, thanks so much. Very exciting. And coming up, new developments this morning in Ukraine.
Yes, stunning new scenes of surrender as Ukrainian forces say Russian troops are laying down their weapons, white flags and all, plus response from the Kremlin on these advances. That's next.
They're going to get the two-point conversion caught in the end zone.
Welcome back. We have heartbreaking developments overnight in the case of a kidnapped family from Central California. Police say the 4 family members who went missing have been found dead. Authorities have been searching for the 8-month-old, her parents, and her uncle since Monday. The sheriff's office believes the family had been taken against their will after visiting a business on Highway 59. The suspect has been taken into custody in connection to this case, but police say they are determining a motive.
Now we have news this morning on the war in Ukraine. Rescue operations are underway in Zaporizhia after Russian missiles hit residential buildings in the city. The region's governor says 1 person is confirmed dead. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin is now in Kharkiv with more on this. Aaron, good to see you. So what can you tell us about these overnight missile attacks there in Zaporizhia? Of course, we also know that's near that nuclear plant. Yeah, that's right, Savannah. Really desperate scenes out of the southern city of Zaporizhia this morning in the early hours. 7 Russian missiles striking the city. One of the missiles hitting an apartment building, collapsing the building, trapping people inside, killing at least 1. Harrowing rescue scenes taking place there in the city itself, showing authorities rescuing a 3-year-old. More missile strikes have been recorded later today. We're waiting to get more details on that, but as you point out, this is the city that is home to the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, the largest power plant in Europe, with Ukrainians and Russians regularly blaming each other for the shelling of that plant. So it's a real area of concern in this war, Savannah. Absolutely. Also, Aaron, I want to ask you about something that people might remember from back in August. We've got new reports from the New York Times, alleged details about that car bombing attack in Moscow that killed the daughter of a prominent Putin ally. What's being alleged here? What do we know now? Yeah, that's right. Daria Dugina is the daughter of a prominent Putin ally and Russian nationalist. She was killed in a car bomb attack outside of Moscow in August. And the New York Times is now reporting, sourcing American officials that elements of the Ukrainian government were actually authorized that attack without naming what specific elements. Is unclear from these officials in the New York Times report if President Zelensky had signed off on the attack, but the officials making it very clear that there was no U.S. involvement in the incident and that they were extremely concerned about the impact that the car bombing can have on a possible escalation of the war. Now, NBC has been unable to verify that New York Times report. Aaron, also before I let you go, I do want to ask you, your own reporting, you've been on the front lines with volunteer soldiers in Kharkiv, doing amazing work in the process. These soldiers play a big role in pushing back Russian forces in that region, which has been one of the big things we've been watching here and seeing unfold. What have they been telling you? What have you been seeing?
Cowboys as they run up to send this one away.
Yeah, that's right, Savannah. And one of the things that has been made of this war, the big differentiators, if you will, the Ukrainians, when you compare them to the Russian troops, is the will of the Ukrainian troops. On the one hand, you have tens of thousands of Russian soldiers dodging, or potential Russian soldiers dodging the draft in Russia as they're trying to mobilize a force of 200,000. Here in Ukraine, there are no shortage of men wanting to fight for their country, and that was on full display when we went out to a small village on the outskirts of Kharkiv, the second largest city in Ukraine. I met a commander named Karnit who says he managed to train out an entire battalion of 200 ordinary Ukrainian men who wanted to fight for their country.
I know they're going to be disappointed about this ball game. The self-inflicted wounds they've had turnovers. You have to think debate that's going to be something they're going to discuss heavily in the film session in the coming days.
You're absolutely right about that, partner, because they're going to sit in that film room and watch every error that they made and figure out how to not do it in the future. And mentally, I think a lot of the guys are already starting to think about, okay, how do we put this behind us and get better for the next time out? This, they'll use as motivation for the rest of the time that they play.
Barnett told me that he's also fighting for his 10-year-old son. He does not want his 10-year-old son to have to go through anything like this at any point. Aaron, thank you so much. Stay safe.
Alex Graham, CBS military analyst, Colonel Jack Jacobs for more on the situation in Ukraine. Colonel, it's always good to see you. So yesterday, President Putin appeared to acknowledge Russia's recent battlefield losses in Ukraine, and also said he expects the situation in those annexed regions to stabilize. So do you think we could see Russia ramp up attacks like the one we saw in Zaporizhzhia in retaliation?
Yeah, I think we can. That's basically what they've been doing during the entire war. When they lost ground, they haven't been in the headway. They rely on one thing they know they can do, and that's indirect fire on population centers, which is why so many Ukrainian civilians have been killed. The Russians have not been doing well on the battlefield as we know. One of the reasons is that they do not know how to
struggles intensify as they drop to 2-6 now on the year, and they will be at home next week to take on the Miami
and they don't have the will
Dolphins.
to fight either. And the result of that are Ukrainian gains on the ground. But winter is coming. It'll be interesting to see whether or not the Ukrainians can keep up the counterattacks and hold the draining seas.
And you talked about air artillery, also use of tanks. So I wanted to get into the tactics a bit because Ukraine's recent gains in the south and east, what have the tactics been to be able to recapture territory so quickly?
That was a good dub, good dub.
From us and from the west. How to do
Got one more opponent.
The Russians tend to send
Shit, I got two more, but I ain't heard nothing from this other guy.
Different than what we teach our soldiers to do and the West does, and that is to integrate them all. Our infantry and tanks go together, and so do the Ukrainians, and they lean into the indirect fire that keeps the heads down of the Russians, permitting the Ukrainians to swarm all over the objective area and kill or capture the Russians. They do this time and time again, which is why a relatively smaller number of Ukrainians has been able to overwhelm Russians on the battlefield. This defeats the morale of the Russians, makes it much more difficult for them to hold terrain. But like I said, winter's coming, a very difficult time, and when the spring arrives again, the war will be, by that time, a year old. And everything down there turns to a sea of mud. We'll see what maneuver will be like. Then things may change in the springtime.
And Colonel, briefly, while we have you, I wanted to get your your assessment of the situation that's in North Korea, which has launched 2 more ballistic missiles, the 6 and 12 days, and all that as military drills between South Korea and the U.S. continue almost in response. So what do you make of what's unfolding?
Well, North Korea is trying to do 2 things. The first is to intimidate everybody in the region so that they can carry on doing what they're doing. Let's face it, the North Koreans are continuing criminal enterprise, and anything that threatens that, they want to repel. The second thing they're doing is trying to mate delivery missiles with nuclear weapons. They have nuclear weapons, they have missiles, but it's extremely difficult to get the nuclear weapon small enough so that it can get on top of a missile. They're working assiduously on that. They haven't had a test in 5 years, but everybody expects them to have another nuclear test soon.
Well, we'll be following it closely. Colonel Jack Jacobs, thank you so much.
And coming up, new developments this morning in that horrific movie set shooting involving actor Alec Baldwin.
The civil lawsuit against him filed by the family of the cinematographer killed has now been settled. We've got the details next.
We're back now
with new developments in that shooting that happened on a movie set during the filming of Rust.
Cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed in the incident, and now her family has settled its civil lawsuit against star and producer Alec Baldwin.
NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos is on set with us for more on this. Of course, if there's a lawsuit, a legal matter at hand, we've got to have Danny Savalos on hand. All right, Danny, how much, walk us through this. How much do we know about this settlement, what it could mean for Alec Baldwin and the film's producers going forward, and what does the settlement mean now in terms of an investigation, that type of thing?
We don't know much about the settlement, like the dollar amounts, and that's not unusual. Normally, in a high-value settlement like this, in a high-profile case, it is hush-hush. Usually, one of the conditions is that the dollar amount not be released, lest the defendants create a sea of swimming sharks looking to circle and come and sue them for some other reason. So it's not unusual to keep this stuff secret. What is unusual is the statement that was released by Mr. Hutchins. Now, that statement could be read as just a, press release about the settlement, but as an attorney, you look at that statement and it seemed to me to be a direct Morse code message to the Santa Fe DA's office to say, look, we've settled. We no longer want any criminal charges. That, I believe, is how you could read that statement, even though that's not what it said explicitly.
And I'm so glad you mentioned the Santa Fe DA because, of course, there are criminal charges being considered right now. Notably, Alec Baldwin has said he did not pull the trigger. But what do you think we could see there?
Consider the timeline. Last week, the Santa Fe DA's office made an announcement, or essentially it was reported, that they were considering charges against, I believe, up to 4 people. And then a week later, miraculously, the parties in the civil suit reach a settlement. That is not a coincidence. It could be, but it's probably not. What happened likely was Baldwin, his legal team, the defendants all said, now that this is getting real on the criminal side, run, don't walk, to settle this case. Now, here's the important thing. That does not bar the prosecutors from bringing a criminal case. In fact, it has no effect whatsoever. But the practical reality is that once a victim no longer considers themselves a victim or doesn't want to cooperate, the case becomes a lot harder. You can subpoena them. You can make them reluctant witnesses. It's just not a good look.
I want to ask you a little bit more about that statement that you mentioned. This is from Hutchins' husband, Matthew. I'm going to read part of it here. It says, I have no interest in engaging in recriminations or attribution of blame to the producers or Mr. Baldwin. All of us believe Helena's death was a terrible accident. Could a statement like that weaken any criminal case in any way? I mean, if the victim's family is saying, we think it was an accident, I mean, what does that mean moving forward in terms of trying to pin blame on someone?
I read the goal of that statement to be exactly that, to minimize the likelihood of a criminal case. In fact, it probably was part of the conditions of the settlement. Hey, we're going to reach an agreement, but you're going to have to go out there in public and say, I'm the victim. I no longer want a criminal case. That doesn't immunize Baldwin and the other potential defendants, but it makes it a lot harder. I would suspect, at least if I were advising on this settlement, I would say make sure there's a statement so that it's clear. And by the way, lo and behold, Santa Fe DA releases a statement saying, hey, we can still prosecute if we want to. Their back was against the wall.
Danny Savalos, always breaking it down for us. Thank you so much. A lot of people wondering about this one. Now, Kevin Spacey is back in the spotlight today. He's on trial for the alleged sexual abuse of Anthony Rapp.
The Star Trek Discovery star says Spacey made unwanted sexual advances during a party in 1986 when Rapp was just 14 years old. Now Rapp is seeking compensatory and punitive damages, and Spacey has denied all of the accusations. NBC News correspondent Ron Allen joins us now from outside the Southern District of New York in Lower Manhattan for more on the trial. Ron, it's good to see you. So what can we expect to see from today's trial? Will Spacey actually be in the courtroom?
Yes, we expect him to arrive here shortly. We expect this to begin with jury selection, so things will get off to a relatively slow start. We may get to opening arguments later this afternoon. It's supposed to be about a 2-week trial, and it's a civil case. It's about money. The plaintiff, Anthony Rapp, is asking for some $40 million in damages if the jury sides for him in this complaint. Again, this case goes back some 25 years. This happened when Rapp was 14 years old and Spacey was in his late 20s. They were both actors on Broadway. There was a party at Spacey's house one evening where this encounter allegedly happened, where Rapp insists that, or claims that, Spacey picked him up and laid him on a bed and somehow fell on top of him, got on top of him, and approached him in a sexual manner. And he had to escape and leave the room and free himself from being underneath Spacey. That's what happened. Spacey did respond to this after the allegations were made public in an article back in 2017. He said that he doesn't remember this happening, but he apologized if it happened, and he attributed it to perhaps being drunk that night at this party. Again, if all this happened. But that's what a jury will decide. This case is happening because of Me Too. This case is allowed to come forward in the court system because of a change in the law that allowed survivors, victims of sexual assault, sexual abuse, to bring their cases forward. So that's what's happening here. But again, about a 2-week trial, very serious allegations facing Kevin Spacey, whose career has been in tatters for many years now.
Hey, Ron, quickly, a couple things have actually changed since this started, though. First, there were these additional claims that were dropped by Judge Kaplan before today's trial. There was also even an additional plaintiff in the initial filing for this case. Tell us what's happened there.
The additional plaintiff, his case was dismissed or removed because he wouldn't reveal his full name. He wanted to take this case on anonymously. The judge wouldn't allow that. And again, this is moving forward. The case involving rap because of this change in the law regarding victims and survivors of sexual assault. And the other thing to point out is that beyond this, Spacey has other legal problems. The most serious one, or the more serious one, is a case in the UK, in London, that is a criminal sexual assault case where there are 3 men who claim that he assaulted them physically about a decade ago on different occasions when Spacey was a theater director over there in England. That trial is set to happen sometime next year. And there's also another civil litigation going on involving the production company, the makers of the Netflix series House of Cards that Spacey starred in. He has to pay them some $30 million because they say they had to fire him, they had to cancel episodes of the series, they lost money because of all these allegations against him.
Thanks for breaking it down. Thanks.
I'm about to play my Magic League game.
Look at your heart. We'll take a look at the rising number of cases of heart disease and also how it's having much more of an impact on minority groups. That's next.
Welcome back. We're going to dedicate this segment to something really important that we often don't talk about. We're going to focus on the leading cause of death, not only in the U.S., but in the world. Heart disease. Get this. It kills 1 person every 34 seconds in the U.S. And also half of all patients diagnosed die within just 5 years.
And on top of that, new studies show more people are being diagnosed with the condition and that it is disproportionately affecting certain minority groups.
Dr. John Tierling joins us now. He's the president of the Heart Failure Society of America and the director of heart failure at San Francisco Veterans Medical Center. Doctor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Such an important topic, and we're happy to dedicate this segment to it. So, I mean, we just heard just how serious this is, the fact that this is the leading cause of death, but it's this public health epidemic that we really don't talk about that much. Why do you think that is? And also, has the pandemic and not news sort of flooding the zone to focus on that changed the situation at all?
So, good morning, and it's really a fantastic opportunity to be able to talk about this issue. Heart disease is, as you mentioned, the #1 cause of death in the United States. An estimated 6 to 7 million adults in the United States have heart failure alone, where the heart doesn't pump blood as it should. And the pandemic clearly revealed many deficiencies of our healthcare system in terms of taking care of these heart failure and patients with heart disease.